This is what's called the Epicurean Paradox. Evil exists. Yes. Well, can God prevent evil? You can say no, but then God is not all-powerful. If you say yes, does God know about the evil? No, then God's not all-knowing. So let's go with yes. Does God want to prevent evil? No, then He's not all-good or all-loving. Then why is there evil?
God's love.
Whoa, it's little apologist. The paradox fails on one big issue. It doesn't really cover free will and love. The two are interchangeable with each other because you have to have free will to have true love. And God, by definition, is love. So, that's why He allows for the evil, because He has to allow for evil to allow for true love.
The problem of evil often starts from a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of God. The argument assumes God's nature is simple. Either He isn't good, isn't powerful, or simply doesn't exist. But the God revealed in Christian theology is more complex than that. God is not just good or powerful, He is love itself. His nature is relational, which changes the whole conversation. See, real love requires freedom. If love is forced, it's no longer love. That freedom means people can choose to love God or not. And in rejecting Him, they allow evil to exist. Evil isn't something God created. It's the absence of love. The absence of the alignment with God. Some argue that free will isn't really free. They say if God set the conditions for us to choose, it's not a choice, it's manipulation. But that argument misses the point. Freedom doesn't mean you have no influences or conditions. It means you can make a choice that matters even within those influences. Take parenting as an example. A parent sets boundaries for a child, rules, guidance, consequences, not to manipulate, but to lead the child toward flourishing. The child still has freedom to choose, even to disobey. It's the same with God. He doesn't force anyone to love Him, but He gives us the framework, our lives, our experiences, even our struggles that allows us to make that choice. Without free will, we'd be robots. We'd go through the motions of obedience, but it would not be real love. And real love is what God wants from us. That's why He made us free, even knowing we might misuse that freedom sometimes. Now, a common objection is that if God created the framework for free will, then He's still responsible for the evil we choose to do. But this argument confuses primary and secondary causes. God is the primary cause. He made the universe and gave us freedom. But we are the secondary causes. We are the ones who make the choices. Evil is not some substance, it's a lack of something. Specifically, a lack of love, a lack of good. It's not something God injected into creation. It's what happens when we turn away from Him. Think of light and darkness. Darkness isn't its own thing. It's just the absence of light. In a similar way, evil arises when people reject God and the love He offers. Now let's use an analogy. Imagine a teacher gives students clay to sculpt. The teacher provides tools, encouragement, and instructions. But what the student creates, it's up to them. If one student takes that clay and makes something harmful, the teacher is not responsible. The clay was given for good purposes, but was misused. That's how God operates. He gave us the freedom for good, not evil, but it's up to us to use it in the right way. Some argue that allowing freedom and the evil that comes with it isn't worth it. Wouldn't it be better if God just stopped evil from existing altogether? But think about what will be lost in a world without freedom. Without freedom, there will be no love, no courage, no forgiveness, and no redemption. The possibility of evil exists because the greatest goods, things like self-sacrifice, reconciliation, and choosing to love, can't exist without freedom. God knew this when He created us. He knew the risk, but He also knew the reward. A world where love is real because it's chosen. And God doesn't let evil have the last word. Even when evil happens, God can and does bring good from it. Look at the cross. The crucifixion was the worst evil humanity could commit. Yet God used it for the ultimate good, the salvation of the world. Some people might say freedom is not real if God sets the conditions. They argue that because God chooses to reveal Himself to some, not to others, we're not really free. But freedom doesn't mean the absence of conditions. It means we have the ability to act within those conditions. Think about a musician composing a song. They have rules to follow: melody, rhythm, structure. But within those rules, they're free to create something unique. God's creation works the same way. The conditions He set, like moral laws, natural order, the possibility of good and evil, are the framework with which we live and make choices. That's not manipulation, that is freedom. God does not force us to follow Him or love Him. He invites us. To love God is to respond to that invitation freely, not under coercion or obligation, and that's what makes it real. Now finally, let's talk about God's responsibility for evil. Some argue that if God allows evil, then He must want it. But that's not true. God allows freedom because He loves us. And with that freedom comes the possibility of evil. But God does not want evil to exist. He wants us to use our freedom to choose Him, to align with His love. Think of it this way. God would rather let evil exist for a time than strip us of our freedom. Why? Because freedom is essential for love, and love is the purpose of creation. Without freedom, there's no love, no relationship, and no meaning. God doesn't just allow freedom, He redeems it. He works through our choices, even our failures, to bring about His ultimate plan. Evil doesn't defeat Him. He overcomes it, transforming it into something good. The problem of evil often comes down to a misunderstanding of who God is. God is not indifferent or powerless. He is love, and love requires freedom. That freedom opens the door to evil, but it also opens the door to everything good. God doesn't force us to love Him. He gives us the freedom to choose. And with that freedom, the responsibility for our actions. Evil is not a mark against God's goodness or power. It's a consequence of our choices. But even in the midst of evil, God is at work, redeeming and restoring, inviting us back into a relationship with Him. The Epicurean Paradox fails because it does not account for this relational, loving God. It assumes a simplistic and personal deity rather than the God who invites, redeems, and loves us. Evil exists, but God's love and redemption are greater. The answer to the paradox isn't found in denying God's existence, but in recognizing the depth of His love and the freedom He has given us to respond to it. God bless you all.